Unusual circumstances require sometimes modifying some things. So the lesson that I was going to present this morning, I'll present to you another time, because there's some things that I do want to share with you this morning in light of the challenges that we're facing that I think are very important. When I was preaching in Portales years ago, we supported a work in Walsenburg, Colorado. We would go up there in the summers, we would take a youth group, and we would hold a vacation Bible school. I would preach a little gospel meeting while we were there. And we'd have opportunity to run off over into the mountains, which were just right there very close. One day, Carol and I drove over to a little town that was up in a high mountain valley. And there was outside of town a little cemetery. And we decided to just stop there. And we took a walk through that cemetery. And something immediately struck me that I've never forgotten. We got to looking at the dates on the tombstones, when people were born and when they died. And we got to noticing a date that occurred over and over and over and over and over again in that little cemetery. And that date was 1918. There were whole families, mom, dad, 3 and 4 children, all buried in a row, who died in that horrible flu season in 1918. There were bits and pieces of families. There were older adults. There were children. It was just amazing. Dozens of tombstones, all with the same date. And it really drove home to me for the first time, because it's one thing to read about it, to say, yeah, there was this pandemic in 1918 and all these people died all over the world. It's another thing to walk into this small town cemetery way off away from everybody and see in a very real way the pain and the damage that had been done by that disease. What we're facing right now, basically, is unprecedented. I'm not that far away from 70 years old. I've never seen anything remotely like this. You all haven't either, because we haven't experienced anything like this. Back in 2009, there was the H1N1 situation that we faced, and there was some panic at that time with that swine flu, and there were a number of people who died, but it was different then than this time. And one of the differences, folks, that we need to understand, one of the reasons why the elders are taking the action that they are, is because this virus is different. Now, coronavirus has been around for a long time. If you look at any of the cleansers that you've got, most of them will list right on there that they will kill the coronavirus. I mean, we've had coronaviruses around for a long time. But this particular form of the virus is new. And nobody has any immunity to this particular form of virus. Nobody's had an opportunity to develop antibodies to it. And so we are consequently all vulnerable, some more than others, but all vulnerable to this particular virus. That's one of the things that makes this different and frightening. Another thing that we're having to deal with is that this virus is what's called, by those who study these kinds of things, a successful virus. And by successful, what they mean is this virus doesn't destroy its host. We're scared to death of Ebola, and we should be. Ebola is a horrible disease that destroys the body. But it's also an unsuccessful virus in that it very quickly destroys its host. And if it kills its host, then it dies too. The challenge with this virus is that it doesn't kill you quickly. In fact, you can carry this virus and you don't even know you have this virus. And so this virus can survive in a host for weeks or months. We don't know yet for sure just how long. And not show any symptoms at all, even though this person is transmitting that virus to others the whole time. And so this virus has become a kind of silent killer in that people were unaware of just how dangerous this virus could be until it had really begun to spread in places like Wuhan, China. I was reading a piece by an Italian reporter this morning, writing to people here in America, pleading with us not to make the same mistake the Italians made. He says, we made a horrible mistake. We did not quarantine fast enough. We waited. And the result was that this virus had an opportunity to spread. And he says, now we do not have the hospital beds. We don't have the respirators. We don't have the ventilators. We don't have the medical staff to care for all those now who are ill with this virus. And the result is that doctors over there are having to make a choice about who lives and who dies because there's not enough medical supplies, enough beds, enough respirators and ventilators to care for everybody. I appreciate that our government is doing what it can to mitigate that. And that's one of the reasons why the elders are taking the steps that they are here. Because you see, what's important is that we, as much as we can, slow the spread of the disease. Not that it's not going to spread, because it is. Because it's highly contagious and people are going to catch it. But we're trying to slow the spread of the disease so that our hospitals are not inundated overnight with patients that they can't handle, facing situations that they can't deal with, being forced to make decisions about life and death between individuals because there's simply not enough beds to care for everybody. That's what we're trying to avoid. Now, that makes some hard choices. I don't like what we're having to do. I'm sure you don't like what we're having to do. I wish we could do it some other way, but I don't see any other logical way to do it except the way that we are, that we're being forced into. This infinitesimal little bug is changing life all over the Western world. European countries, one after another, are closing their borders, shutting off travel. We're now facing similar situations here. Economically, it's devastating us. This little bug, we're not talking about missiles flying over here and atomic bombs going off. We're not talking about some kind of electronic pulse that would disable all of our electronics here. We're not talking about anything like that. Nobody's declared war on us. And yet, we're at war. A war with a virus. With a virus that can inflict all kinds, and is inflicting all kinds of damage on us. In the last few weeks, and who could have predicted? You know, we talked about this before, and I think it's so important, and Steve stressed this in some of our Connect groups and that kind of thing. It's so important to understand. Brother, more than ever, do you understand we're not in control of our lives? We can't predict the future. There is so much that we don't know. A year ago this time, who could possibly dream that May was fixing to come, and with it, an unprecedented flood that was going to inflict all kinds of misery on all kinds of families and horrific financial damage to so many? We didn't know. When 2020 started, who knew that we were going to be facing what we face, that the stock market was going to crash, that we were going to lose trillions of dollars of value in the market in a matter of days. If you've got a 401k or an IRA, if you're like us, you don't even want to look at it because you know the damage that's been inflicted over the last few days. We've got cruise lines shutting down. We've got airlines fearing bankruptcy. We've got hotels and motels and all kinds of venues shutting down. No March Madness. No preseason baseball. No golf tournaments. And the impact, understand, people kind of laugh at that. The impact of that's billions of dollars, folks. Billions of dollars that this is costing us. There's no telling by the time we get through this what this is going to cost us, just in terms of money. But it's going to be unprecedented, I'll guarantee you. And it's going to ruin some companies. It's going to ruin a lot of lives that won't even be touched by the virus. But they'll be hit by the complications from this virus. Now, I've had people ask me, is this a judgment from God? Is that what this is? Is God finally, wham, you know? Because for a long time, I mean, let's be honest, people have said, when's God going to wake up Western Europe? When is God going to say to the United States, I've had it, no more, I'm through, it's time to give you a lesson? And of course, my answer to that, because I'm not God, is I don't know. But I know one thing, I hope we're not slow learners, and I hope we're paying attention to what's going on and to some lessons that we need to learn. A couple of passages of Scripture I want to share with you that I think are just super relevant at a time like this. First one from the book of James, chapter 4, beginning in verse 13. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you don't know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we'll live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Is that relevant to what's going on? We've got all these plans, we've got all these ideas, we've got all these things we're going to do, and bang, out of the blue, something that people had feared might happen but didn't know if it would ever happen has happened. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And all kinds of well-laid plans and all this human wisdom of how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to do that, and I've got this prepared and that fixed, have gone right out the window. And James says through the Spirit, you're arrogant if you think you know what tomorrow holds. Now, as we've been talking about, thank God we know who holds tomorrow. We know who's in control. We know who's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We know who rules. We know who reigns. And there is absolutely peace in that. There is. Because for a child of God, whatever happens, it is going to be okay, and it is going to be okay. I have no doubt about that. It's going to be okay. But in the meantime, are we listening to the circumstances that we're being confronted with and paying attention to the message that it sends? The book of Revelation, chapter 3. The letter to the church at Laodicea. I know your works. You're neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. So because you're lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. For you say, I'm rich, I have prospered, I need nothing, not realizing that you're wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich, and white garments, so that you may clothe yourself, and the shame of your nakedness may not be seen, and salve to anoint your eyes, so that you may see. Those whom I love, I reprove and discipline. So be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. What was the church at Laodicea dealing with? They were dealing with the complacency of materialism. They were dealing with the complacency of prosperity. They were dealing with, as the saying goes, being fat and happy. And everything's just fine, and we're doing okay. IRAs are fine, 401ks are fine, got the vacation home, got the third car, got the fourth bedroom, got the boat. We're doing just fine. And he says, you're complacent. You don't care. I wish you cared. I wish you were cold. I wish you were something. Just not uncaring. And sometimes I think it takes something like this to wake us up. To get us to pay attention, to see what really matters, to see what really counts, what's really, really important. And as has been pointed out, I feel so sorry for people out in the world who are waking up going, you know what? I am wretched, miserable, and poor, and blind, and naked. Because all this stuff isn't protecting me. All this stuff isn't making me happy. A couple of things that I think are really important. One is, brethren, this presents a tremendous opportunity to us to be light and salt and leaven in this world. I'll be honest with you, I was so proud when that text came a couple of days ago. If you're over 70 and shut in, or if you're in infirm health and you need somebody to run the store for you or pick up something for you, just call this number, and we've got some young adults here in the congregation that'll go take care of that for you. Praise God. What a spirit. What a wonderful, wonderful attitude. What a neat thing. What is that? It's the love of Christ. That's people saying, if you need help, please. In this situation, let us help. We'll be glad to do what we can for you. That flood was an awful thing. It gave God's people all kinds of opportunities to show God's love. And that's exactly the way I view this. This is an awful thing. But it gives us all kinds of opportunities to step into your neighbor's life. Maybe there's a little widow lady a couple of doors down. Maybe there's somebody. You can make a difference in their life. You can show them Jesus. You can help them out in a very difficult time. You can be salt and light and leaven. And along with that, Jeannie Dodd sent me this, and I just wanted to read it to you. I think this I don't know who wrote this. There's no credit given for who said this, but listen to this. This is all about perspective. And right now I think we as Christians need to keep a good perspective. May we, who are merely inconvenienced, remember those whose lives are at stake. May we who have no risk factors remember those who are most vulnerable. May we who have the luxury of working from home remember those who must choose between preserving their health and making their rent. May we have the flexibility to care for our children when their schools close. Remember those who have no options. May we who have to cancel our trips remember those who don't have a safe place to go. May we who are losing our margin money in the tumult of our economic market remember those who have no margin at all. May we who settle in for a quarantine at home remember those who have no home. As fear grips our country, let us choose love. During this time when we cannot physically wrap our arms around each other, may we spiritually do exactly that. I think that says it beautifully. And that's what it's all about. Brethren, we live in challenging times. And we are facing a challenging situation. And I would lastly ask you, please, and I know you are, but I'm going to ask you anyway, pray. Go before the Father and beg Him for mercy. Beg Him to spare this family pain. I don't want to lose anybody here to something like that. You don't either. I don't want to see people hurting and in pain because their health's broken, their life's ruined, they've lost loved ones. I had a friend who was talking to me a few years ago, and he said something I've never forgotten. He said, my grandparents lived out on a farm, and Granddad farmed with a mule. And that mule pulled the plow, that mule did everything. And if that mule got sick, Granddad couldn't call a vet. There wasn't a vet. Granddad couldn't run down to the store and pick up whatever medicine he needed to help that mule get better. There wasn't any. His family, in a very real sense, would eat or not eat based on the health of that mule. And if that mule got sick, all he could do was pray and ask God to heal that mule. Because his livelihood depended on that mule. For a long time, you see, we've been able to, I go to the doctor, I can run down to the pharmacy, I can do this, I can do that. Every once in a while, we got to ask God to heal the mule. Because there's nowhere else to turn. And we need to be asking God to heal the mule. We need to be praying that He'll show us mercy. We need to pray for our elders. We need to pray for their wisdom. We need to pray for our elderly because they're vulnerable. We need to pray that God will bless His family, that God will bless His people. Ultimately, I pray God will bless this country and all those in this world that are facing this crisis. If we can help you in some way this morning, pray with you. If you're ready to enter the kingdom and be baptized into Christ, if there's any way we can help you, please come while we stand and while we sing.
Father God, just for today, help me walk the narrow way. Help me stand when I might fall. Give me strength to hear your call. May my steps be worship, may my thoughts be praise, may my words bring honor to your name. May my steps be worship.